Walking Between Worlds is produced by Culture Bound. Our purpose is to equip people to be effective in a language and culture different than their own. We don't necessarily agree with all of the opinions expressed by guests on the podcast, but we highly value the conversations that take place when we listen carefully to what one another is saying. To learn more about Culture Bound, visit our website at www.culturebound.org.
Hello and welcome to episode 2 of this series of Walking Between Worlds. I am your co-host, Kylie Trout.
And I'm your other co-host, John Mazzarella.
This episode, we have Terry Steele on, and we're just going to be talking mostly about business and the workplace and a little bit of economics and the way that some things have shifted because of COVID and changed. We're going to reminisce on a few things. So just to start off with that, do you guys remember when you could just walk into Target without there being a line?
Yes.
Or Home Depot. Actually, you know what? I haven't had to stand in line at Target for a long time.
It's
they haven't
been a
been
while.
checking.
I went the other day and I was able just to grab my bottle of water and run. I didn't have to wait in line or do anything crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, they haven't been counting people either for a while.
Yeah.
So
I remember when that first started though, that line went around the building sometimes.
Yeah, I remember there were a few times like before you had to wear a mask into places where I didn't wear a mask into Target or wherever it was I was going, and some people were and some people weren't, and you're like, what the heck are the norms right now?
Yeah.
And yeah, that was a really interesting time when that was all coming about. So I think one of the very biggest and obvious changes as COVID has set in and the pandemic has just kind of like become normal is a lot of businesses shifted to having all their employees work remotely, or whatever employees could all worked from home. So that's been like the biggest change. We haven't had to do that much at Culture Bound because, I mean, there's only a few of us that actually are in Portland on the West Coast.
We have a lot of remote workers already just by the nature of the business and their personal lives. Yeah.
Yeah. And our company is set up pretty well to handle that kind of a shift, but there have been a lot of businesses that are not, or if you run like a restaurant or a big store or anything along those lines where purchases and income is made by purchasing items and being in person, you have to have people there. You can't just like go home and do your work. You can't work retail from home.
Right. Yeah. You don't have a home office for retail.
Right. So it's been very clear that like working from home does not work for everyone. And there's been some implications of that for sure.
Yeah. And even for those who may not have the space at home, I mean, you think of like Portland and other city areas that are already, hard to find the square footage for a house or apartment that you want, or it's too expensive to have that space. Where do you put that home office? It takes up another spot in that you may not have, takes up space you may not have already.
Oh yeah. It's been really kind of interesting seeing different retailers pushing home office furniture. Yeah. Like the amount of stuff that's available now that wasn't really pushed about a year ago. There's been a huge push for people to make a home office and make it nice. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And it's funny because I remember seeing some article that had like people's most creative home offices, and you had like boxes, people just doing all kinds of random stuff just to make some semblance of an office at home and have that, separation between home life and work life, because that's even harder to achieve when you're working at home, to have those separated out. It kind of,
Yeah. Terry, you had to set up, did you have a home office set up before COVID?
Yeah, we actually were planning on that anyway before COVID, simply because I do a lot of independent study. I'm a teacher at another school, so just to have a workspace that was separate from the Culture Bound office.
Yeah.
And so we had a 3-car garage, and my brother-in-law came in and fenced off one of the bays, and it's my everything place now. It's my bookshelves. It's my exercise equipment, it's my office, and every one of them are separate into 3 separate sections in 1/3 of the garage. So a lot of stuff going in a little tiny spot, but it's my man cave.
I remember we were living, when COVID first hit, we were living in a much smaller apartment, and ended up taking what you would consider like the storage / mud room We had the washing machine, the dryer, and the heater, and all of that like actually in there physically, and kind of coming up with a home office situation around the workbench. I didn't even have a chair. I just kind of used like I stacked some boxes for the backing, and I put like some cushions down on this wood piece of furniture we had, and made do, you know. And now we ended up moving in like April of 2020, and ended up having like a basement space and some housemates, and we all kind of created a little home office down there. But we were lucky enough to and blessed enough to have that. But again, there's lots of people that just don't have those opportunities to create a separate area for those for work.
Yeah, and we've definitely seen some of the effects of like having your home and your workplace and your resting place and your school place, for example, all in the same room or all in the same house.
Especially when you have multiple children going to school at the same time.
Absolutely.
And you telecommute.
Yes. And that, I mean, the whole academic side of things is something we are going to be diving into next episode. But yeah, if you live with a lot of other people, that can be really, really hard to maintain a sense of like focus and devotion to the tasks at hand.
End up using my wireless noise canceling headphones more often than not when I am working from home, just to hopefully create that environment of concentration, because otherwise. I've also noticed too, we use internet provider, and they do have a limit to how much you can use, and it's a high limit. You know, I mean, every internet provider has a limit of how much you can download, upload. I think it's in the 1 terabyte range. I've noticed that we've almost hit that in the past few months, just because of, for my job especially, I have a lot of media projects. So I have a lot of uploading and downloading of huge files that I do, and that's not always accounted for. Something you might think about if you're just uploading, text messages or Word documents, but I've definitely seen an effect on that on our personal internet. The internet provider saying you can't go over this amount.
So it's almost like what you're not spending necessarily on gas and like the cost of commuting in general, you're spending on increased internet.
Right. And, here at Culturebound, when you are an actual remote worker, there's that distinguisher between remote working and telecommuting. We do have an option people can choose that we help pay for that home office cost, because otherwise, we would have to pay for office space. So there is, some
There's
incentive,
some offsetting
happening there. But in a lot of these cases, there's not, because companies aren't set up for that. They don't have the policies. And also, it's unprecedented. So.
Yeah.
But that's the new normal.
Yeah.
Companies going to have to start thinking forward on that, because that's the reality we're in. We're not going back. We're moving forward. Now, how much of that is going to remain, yet to be seen when we actually get some sense of clarity of when this will come to an end, or at least there'll be a permanent shift to whatever is going to be the new normal.
Yeah, something I was reading recently, it had to do with remote working and like what people are doing with office space that's no longer being used. There's a lot of office space like in the downtown area that they're looking at just turning back into apartment use, and just redoing parts of buildings that had once been for office work specifically. And then in conjunction with that, the prediction is that you'll have like satellite locations for businesses that do that in more suburban areas, so that workers there'll be an office for like HR and things like that, and administration, but a lot of the employees will still just work at home.
I've heard of larger companies setting up those specific satellite offices in the suburban neighborhoods. Like that's their way of thinking in the future, is that instead of driving an hour to the actual main office, you drive 20 minutes to your nearest satellite to work with other coworkers. Really intriguing.
all the people that are nearest each other then are working together, which isn't necessarily a bad change.
Not at all.
It's like small businesses within a large business. Like the setup is similar to that, I would think. Not a bad change, not necessarily a good change though either. So I'm sure we'll start seeing some of the changes outside of the workplace that ends up causing. If that is the direction that companies end up going.
Well, figure it's been a year. It usually takes somewhere between a year and 16 months, these type of trends, to find some sense of balance. And business is usually the first place where we see that, because academics are dealing with so many different things. Business has to be cutting edge, because if you're not making money, then you're not.
Everything else falls apart.
Everything falls apart.
Yeah.
With academia, it's they have a lot more going with it, or religious or governmental. So business is the one that has to be Johnny on the spot with these things. So we are now heading into the home stretch of where they're going to start saying this is how we're going to move forward for the next 5 years, and then they'll retool it for the next 5 years and come to some sort of an equality, a balance. Sorry.
And along with that, it's been hard, I think, for a lot of businesses to be on the spot and just
Right.
like make that quick change, in large part because there's been this distinction from on high of essential and non-essential work.
Right.
And so there's a lot of people that are essential workers and they've had to make the fastest, quickest, hardest adjustments, whereas you have non-essential businesses that have just had to close, and they
Yeah.
don't get a chance to adapt and readjust in the way that they need to keep doing business. Have we seen anything similar in history where businesses were kind of determined to be either essential or non-essential?
Well, that's been the 20th century and the 21st century, where we see business adjusting, or industry adjusting to be useful. One of the best examples is World War II. And so when all the men went away to war, the women oftentimes would take up hard hat jobs. And this is where, like in Portland, our shipyards, very famous shipyards, they made battleships. The Kaiser shipyards made, and I don't know what class battleship, but they were fairly large because we have a big channel to be able to put them through. And so Rosie the Riveter, I don't know how many people are familiar with this, actually was modeled after a Portland woman who
Really?
Rosie the Riveter was technically supposed to be a Portlander. I don't know if she was, but that's what it was supposed to be, because
Interesting.
all the women, and they have all these women working on the battleships, and not very many men who were of age, because they grabbed all of them for the war. So that's where the Kaiser shipyards, Kaiser as in Kaiser Hospital,
Yeah.
big business, they actually adjusted their industry to build those boats. And after the war, they shifted back. And so we see during the war, a lot of industry actually moved in that direction of, recycling scrap for the war, building any number of industry to be able to help the soldiers.
Yeah, and reusing or repurposing different factories to make war supplies or things that were
Yep.
needed reminds me of, there's a lot of distilleries right now, or that
Yeah.
in the last year have shifted to making hand sanitizer.
Yeah.
That have been like for hospitals and stuff.
Uh-huh.
So there's that same element.
Yeah, there's one of the pillow companies or bed sheet companies or whatever were making masks, and it's and you say that's genius. Well, now you're saying we have to do this for a year, and some of those companies are taking a hit as a result.
Yeah.
But the PR is so good for them,
Mhm.
so they stay essential, and people remember. Oh, you guys helped us out, especially in the right at the beginning.
So how have some larger corporations been affected as opposed to smaller businesses?
Larger corporations always have more resources than small businesses, and more control and a little bit more influence as well when it comes to mandating.
When we go into a crisis like that, where there needs to be authority from on high, what has happened is that those businesses you thought, oh yeah, well that's fine, actually have gotten a very powerful cards dealt to them. All those industries just say suddenly we really need you. Zoom has been very necessary. Tech has been very necessary. With campaigns, they have often go through social media, and there's that whole thing there where a company that was an industry that actually was like conversations now has become a news organization, a power location, and that's where you have all these people arguing about internet giants in Silicon Valley. It would have happened eventually, but not nearly this fast or nearly this powerful. And those corporations have taken on the power of almost governmental power. And it's just, I never saw that happening. Really amazing on that.
You look at the difference between, say, we can use the food industry for this example of McDonald's compared to the mom and pop shop that sells hamburgers, and what McDonald's can get away with and what resources that they have to continue to operate their business, and even during this time make maybe even a little bit more money compared to the mom and shop place hamburger joint that didn't have the resources to put together a perfect COVID plan, didn't have the influence to, be able to, have things kind of go their way or not, and end up getting shut down.
Drive-throughs. If you're a restaurant, if you're a restaurant that operates out of a drive-through or like a food cart or something like that, you automatically have a resource that hole-in-the-wall places do not have.
Yeah.
So what do you do when an entire village in the Midwest, their ordinance is we have no drive-throughs in our village, and it's about a 10 by 10 mile radius, and you're living on the edge of that. That was our experience, and literally trying to find a drive-through took us a half hour. And now what happens to that entire location when they're shutting down restaurants and no drive-through?
Well, do you have the resources to put together a brand new system of, car delivery? Do you have the tech skills in your mom and pop company, to set up Uber Eats or DoorDash?
Are you in a position then when you have to fall back on things
Right.
like Uber Eats or DoorDash or whatever?
Can you maintain a steady
make
flow of
things work for you?
income
Yeah.
from those services?
Which those services suck the life out of small businesses.
They do, yeah. You see small amounts of income from those, yeah.
Yeah, really small.
And I mean, honestly, when it comes to consumers too, are you more likely to order from McDonald's on Uber Eats or the mom and pop shop? I mean, I guess it depends on who you are, but yeah.
Personally, I don't think I would ever order fast food off of Uber Eats. Because,
I did once and I regretted it.
Yeah.
Cold fries are not good.
I could just go down there myself.
It's like I could spend an extra $10 have it delivered to me, or I could drive 8 minutes. Which one?
Yeah, exactly. So all of that being said, how in the world are people getting by during this time? There have been like a record number of people filing for unemployment benefits. I mean, millions and millions and millions of people that have had to apply for unemployment benefits just in the last few months alone, let alone the last year. So how is it that people are still kind of trying to like make their way in life and make things happen for themselves?
It's amazing who has actually the shops that actually have maintained and improved. And this is a really odd, random one, but the gaming industry.
Oh yeah.
And the gaming industry, to begin with, COVID hit a kind of bad time where there weren't a lot of AAA games coming out, and they began to push and push and push. And the last 9 months have been huge. And I walked into a game store the other day. I had a gift certificate from a number of years ago. Thought I might as well spend it, and they were talking about the game industry shutting down. So I went in and got my game and looked around, and I said, I'm really glad you guys are around. Do you think you'll survive? And as much as there were limits of people in the store, 11 people, all 11 people were in line. And he looked at me and said, oh yeah, we're doing well, because people now are getting money. They do have disposable income, and people, I saw them right there, people buying consoles right there, hundreds of dollars in consoles that were going out the door. And people are saying, I'm not using all my time. I'm bored. Let's connect. Let's game.
Yeah.
Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, they're all seeing rises. Well, not Disney Plus. They're seeing some issues happen. But a lot of these, separate, completely separate. A lot of these entertainment industries, we're now moving past the place of people going shelter in space, shelter in spot. They're now saying, okay, this is the new normal. I need to continue to get my entertainment. And Jacob follows NASCAR, and some of the moves they've made with, e-racing, amazing. This is so realistic. iRacing. I'm not a NASCAR fan. Sorry. Okay, nothing against NASCAR. It's really innovative that a year ago I wouldn't have imagined that to take place.
I think as we've seen the unemployment numbers go down in the past couple months, yeah, you've seen that people end up having, again, more expendable income. I think you have that, I don't even know what effect you would call it, but where everyone was saving or trying to just to get to buy so much, and then all of a sudden they get their income back, or they get another job, or something happens, and then because they budgeted so tight beforehand the past year, all of a sudden they have like, oh, I have all this disposable income, you know, and you know the meme of like Walmart selling TVs for $600 too, you know, and that kind of stuff too.
I'm interested to know, because it seems like people are at a point where they're kind of back into the swing of things a little bit. It's not gone back to normal. It's not going back to normal, but we're finding a rhythm again.
Yeah.
And people aren't staying unemployed. They're going where the jobs are. And the jobs right now are in shipping, for example, or I mean, like Amazon, FedEx, those kinds of jobs. I've had several friends either lose a job at a restaurant or lose a job doing something they had done for a really, really long time even, and then go into shipping because that's where there's a job and they pay pretty okay.
I mean, it almost feels like you talk about how are people getting by. We're seeing lines between lower and middle class get even more divided than they already were because of that. One of the shifts that we had been seeing the past few years that was, I think, sped up by the virus arriving and things being affected in the economy is what you would categorize as big tech versus big oil, or industrial versus tech, and especially in the economy in general, but also in the stock market. You know, was it Apple? Just how believe they were leading in the stock market a few months ago. At least they had surpassed one of the big oil companies as one of the most valued companies in the world, and that was a huge, significant thing that happened, you know, during the virus, because it always had been, you know, big oil and industrial and
pharma,
you know, big pharma, all those companies. But now, you know, Silicon Valley, you know, and all the tech companies, all the startups, all those things, some have been lucrative and some have solidified and are kind of taking over. That seems to be the new normal.
Yeah. I saw, and I mean, one of the big themes for this series is just about the shifting role of technology in our day-to-day lives. And with big tech being such a big name, or I guess I don't know if it's a big name, but like, you know, it's the thing now. So I saw something on Facebook that had said, knowledge is power, and those in power control the knowledge. And so when we think about big tech, I mean, you think about things like Facebook and the way that there's been a big push of like fact checking different articles or just people's posts in general, whether it's about COVID-19 or political things in general. Like that's, I think it's a big progression forward that tech is so integrated into our lives, and it's also like it's a little bit scary. There's a lot of people that are either paranoid or nervous about the way that that technology is so present all the time in what we're doing. Does that kind of make sense?
It does, yeah, and it's interesting to see with that too, the increase of, I mean, just how many tech companies have gone public, and when it comes to investing. You know, I mean, I feel like Silicon Valley was very private. You know, a lot of companies were private investors, and it was all about money. And then you see things like, I think, you know, like Uber is kicking it off with going public, and all these tech companies that are more and more going public right off the bat instead of waiting years to go public. I mean, that affects a lot of things, including the public opinion and how who owns and how information is controlled and how that knowledge and power is distributed. It's
Yeah, it's a big deal, like for business and for just everyday life as well.
And it's funny, you'll see a joke or a meme, you know, on Instagram or wherever, and even if it's a joke about COVID, it still has the little has a little banner under there.
It's like
check
for
the
info.
CDC.
Yeah, seriously. But along that same line, there's a shift being, I guess it's not even a shift that's being revealed, but the shift to big tech reveals something that was present there all along in our value system, which I think honestly boils down to convenience in a lot of ways. Like, technology makes a lot of these shifts that are happening in business possible. Without integrated technology, we can't have working from home. We can't have things like the podcast, honestly.
Yeah.
But it's a culture under pressure making a large revelation of where we actually were all along with technology in particular.
Yeah, at the points where you could at points in the past where you could actually go without being attached to technology, that is becoming less and less possible. And
Yeah.
you could even argue in today's world, to actually truly succeed and live like a life in a Western country like America, you can't not be a part of some sort of, and that can't have, you have to have some sort of form of technology and be using it.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
know?
Yeah, if you're not using technology on a daily basis, you're like, and this is already kind of the case, but you're behind the time, so to speak. And now, more than ever, which I hate saying because that's the only thing people are saying, but now more than ever, you need to have made that switch over and be utilizing that tool, especially as a business.
Unless, of course, you've already had things set up in a way that you've already given up technology, like some groups, some religious groups, some social groups that have building working systems outside of technology. Those are exceptions, of course. We're talking about individuals who
have found what works for them.
Who found what works for them, yeah. One of the biggest dependencies on technology I've seen that become, I guess, the most popular is shopping and delivery. I mean, we talked a little bit about packaging and packages and and shipping and everything, how those industries are booming. And that's because of the dependence on online shopping.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I live in a house with 5 other people, and the amount of Amazon packages that we get every week is borderline unhealthy. I want to say we use Amazon a lot, and our neighborhood uses Amazon a lot. We have the same like couple of trucks that come through with the same drivers and everything. It's almost like the mail. But yeah, I mean, Amazon has been doing that for quite some time, but now we have things like we can do online shopping for grocery stores. I feel like that's more recent. Or I like using Target as an example because it's like my favorite place. So like Target, Walmart, Home Depot, like places like that have opened up online shopping in a much larger capacity, or pickup, like coming and picking up your groceries instead of walking through the store to get them.
Now I remember back in my day. No, I remember when Amazon first offered like their Prime grocery delivery. I remember that because I tested it out, and this was like years ago. Yeah, back when I worked in IT, I was like, I gotta try this, and I got a whole bunch of food sent to me, perishable food sent to me in an Amazon package, and that was like a huge deal back then. Like everyone, like all my friends were like there to watch me open it because it was such a big deal. We're talking
all your friends,
all my friends. Now it's just commonplace. I mean, I remember we needed a new can opener because I broke our can opener, and I was looking at Walmart, and I was like, okay, can I pick one up today? Do I have to walk in the store, like old days, or can I get something delivered to me? Like,
back in my day, we went and walked through the store.
Oh no, I want to pick it up in the parking lot. But all their spots for the next, and this is during the snowstorm that we had here too, so that is also an aspect in this. But I think it was all scheduled out until Saturday, and this was a Tuesday that I did this. And then I went to Fred Meyer, and I was like, okay, I went on their site. I was like, how soon can I pick this up at the store? Like, how soon can I have someone walk to my car with a bag and give it to me? And it was 3 days out, and that wasn't even like, anyways.
People are using it.
Yeah. And it's becoming more and more popular, more and more commonplace. And it just surprised me.
That's another job, another employment opportunity that a lot of people have flocked to, is being an in-store shopper. Yeah. Which personally haven't had like the best experience having other people shop for me.
That's fair.
Sometimes they pick out the wrong stuff and they think it's the right stuff. And I'm like, I would just be a better in-store shopper than you are. Yeah. But yeah, that's something that didn't exist maybe a few years back.
Right.
That is really popular now.
I remember when Instacart first started doing their ads like 3 years ago or something, and what a wild idea that was, and
Yeah.
how many people would complain about getting the wrong stuff.
Yeah.
But now, yeah, grocery stores offer that directly for you, and it's interesting to see large corporations that first resisted an idea like that, because some stores were not a fan of that, or some restaurants even were not a fan of Uber Eats, and some still aren't, which is extremely fair. But how some of them have adapted and taken that same idea and implemented it themselves.
Yes.
Which
I think
I'm
I
on board
had-
for.
I got a new pet this last summer. I have a crested gecko. She's very adorable.
Does not sell insurance.
Does not wow, seriously, does not sell insurance. But when I got her, she was really small, and then she grew. She like doubled in size, and so I had to get her a new enclosure. And I was shopping through, I don't know, I think it was PetSmart, but they had free delivery, and it was through like DoorDash or something, which usually does restaurant stuff,
Yeah.
right? It was either DoorDash or like Grubhub or something.
It reminds me, I had ordered something off of Walmart, and I got the shipping or whatever, and it arrived through Postmates, because I got the email confirmation that it had been delivered, and it had a picture of the delivery, which like what they like to do, which is nice.
Yeah.
And it had a Postmates logo on that, and also it was not in a Walmart box.
Yeah.
So even though I had ordered it from WalmartOnline.com to get shipped to me, instead of shipping it from like a warehouse, they hired someone from Postmates to go to the store, pick it up from a local store, and just drop it on my doorstep as it is. It was
As
a blanket.
if it were food.
And I had ordered, and it just dropped the blanket plain as day on my doorstep.
No packaging.
No packaging. I had ordered it as a package from Walmart.com online, and I was just like, what? And which I was happy to have it like ahead of time. Like I got it it was the same day, so I was like not complaining, except I had to wash a blanket because I just put it on the doorstep,
Yeah.
in the middle of the fall. But yeah,
Ridiculous.
large corporation, Walmart, utilizing a service like Postmates to keep up with the demand of delivery. Yeah,
and it's interesting as that's becoming more commonplace. The hesitancy of people who use that on a regular basis to actually go into a store and be with people. I think there's a certain level of tension that has been developing between just members of the public in general, and COVID related or non-COVID related. Just in this country, there's been a lot of tension that's arisen in the last year that you honestly never know when or how you're going to step on someone else's toes. And so I think there's been a lot of either impatience with people who you don't know, or just a hesitancy to engage with other people in general. And you can write it off as like being COVID related, and like, I don't want to talk to people because I don't want to get them sick, or they're going to get me sick or something. But it's deeper than that. I think it gets to a point of just avoiding being relational with others. So I'm curious as a speaker here, and just to ask our audience, if you're listening, what are some ways that you have either struggled with empathy, or ways that you are practicing empathy in a time where that is very, very difficult? Which is a kind of a strange question to ask, I think, on the business episode, but it really affects our lives on a day-to-day basis, and business is a large part of our lives.
Right.
So how are you practicing empathy right now? And if you're not, what could you be doing?
Especially with your coworkers, if we're talking business too, the interactions that you have over Zoom compared to in person also, or Slack and text messaging, all of those play a part, and what's the struggle there? How's that going?
So where are you at with empathy right now? And how would you like that to be going? How is it going? So thank you for listening to today's episode. If you have questions, again, please send them to podcast@culturebound.org, correct?
Correct.
And we would love to get back to you, chat with you, see where you're at with some of this stuff, how some of these things have affected you this last year. We'd love to hear from you. So feel free to join us next week for episode 3. We're going to be talking about the academic world, and I believe we will have Jacob on at the very least for that next episode. So that'll be fun.